All right, there we go. Good evening, everybody. This is Jeff Colson, Junior Hockey Advisor. It is Wednesday. It's 9 o'clock. It's time to talk hockey and talk about some great things. I want to thank you for joining us and jumping in. And it's been a few great weeks. We've seen just incredible numbers of people watching the videos, and we appreciate it. I'm running solo tonight. Mike has had a little sadness in his family. Our thoughts and prayers are with Mike and his family. And I hope he'll be back next week and everything will start getting back to normal for all of us. And it's that time of year. So I also want to say congratulations to all the teams out there that have qualified for playoffs. Nationals for youth is going on this weekend. I think that is a great time of year. I can't wait. I'm excited to watch some hockey this weekend. Junior playoffs starting and some are already going. That's great. Some of you saw the post today that I put up about the Brahmas. And I'm just so proud to be a part of an organization like that. We took the overall points title for the North American Hockey League this year. And Mike and I are ecstatic, and we're both very excited to be a part of that program. Tonight, we're going to cover two topics. We're going to cover some of the back office, higher end analytic prep for juniors and trying to get ready for the draft. And this isn't just for juniors. This is used at the pro level too, to some extent. And every team's different. This is just the way we do things. And I should say I do things and we do things to try to get better as a organization. So we're going to cover that. We're also going to cover, just some phenomenal statistics on one organization and their ascension to the highest parts of hockey, and that just an incredible percentage of players that make it out of this organization. We're going to cover that organization, and most likely you or your son probably aren't going to get into this league, and I'll tell you why. And it's not because of your talent level now. So we'll have some fun with that too. So with that said, let's get rolling. Wow, that was quick. Didn't even get a chance to grab my tea. I'm actually drinking tea. I do one cup of caffeinated coffee a week, and it's right before the show. And then during the show, I'm drinking tea, and this has been going. Hey, we've been on. I think this is like 7 consecutive weeks, maybe 8 consecutive weeks. We haven't missed. Knock on wood. We're in that consistent flow now. All the wacky things that were going on. You probably know I downsized last year from our house in one of the suburbs of Rochester. We moved further out and we got a condo, my wife and I, and we did a lot of work to it right off the bat. Replaced the kitchen, replaced all the floors, took out a fireplace, and that just got in the way of so many things because there was dust and a mess all over the place, and it was really hard to try to get a spot to do what I'm doing right now because everything was just all tore up. So we're almost done. We're stabilized, a lot more stabilized than we were. So I'm looking forward to the consistency that comes along with that. So I think we're going to try to make a run all the way through the spring here and take a little break in the summertime. Let us know what your thoughts are on that. I see some people already checking in. It's going to be a great show. Let's start off with the analytics. So, we're all prepping for the draft that is coming up. For our league, it's the North American Hockey League. That's good. We start preparing for this virtually right after definitely after main camp and when the season gets rolling into the fall. Because after main camp, we get a chance to assess, who made the cut at main camp as far as the draft picks from last year, and who didn't make it, and we start assessing why we missed the boat on some, and some we know. Now there's every team drafts differently, and when I say that, some draft for the whales, they're looking to hit a home run with a kid that's in the USHL. Maybe there's a kid in the BCHL. Maybe there's a kid in the NCDC that's tearing it up, and a whale is taking a shot at a kid from somewhere else. Sometimes you'll even see NCAA Division One players drafted because maybe they went to college young, maybe it wasn't working out. You hear that maybe their grades weren't so good. Maybe you know that they're not happy with the way things are. It's not the school or the social or the team don't fit for them. So you'll see from time to time even players in Division One drafted, and that's whale hunting. You're looking for the big home run. So those are low percentage draft picks. Set those aside. That's one category. You can go into youth and draft there. You can go into other leagues and draft there. It's an open palette for what you draft and what you're looking to draft. Now, every team does it differently. Like I said, we try to establish, a policy, and this is something that I brought into the organization is trying to find a fit that gives us best in league standards and trying to establish, that across the board, we are the ones to shoot for. Now, hey, look, I know I'm going to give away some things that other organizations can use tonight. I'm fine with that because I've given this away in lectures, for USA Hockey for the level 5 and the level 4 before. And, there are some people that buy in and there's some people that just don't want to do the work. And what I mean by doing the work is drafts are the evaluation of drafts are on two things in my book. Yeah. And then some other layers come in afterwards. But the first two things are efficiency in the draft. And what does efficiency mean? What is the percentage of players that you draft that make the roster? So if I draft, let's say an even number, 10, if I get one kid to stick, that's 10%. 5 kids, that's 50%. 6 kids, 60%. You get it. And then the second part of that efficiency is comparing yourself to the other teams in the league. How many did they draft? How many did they have that made the roster? A secondary number is how many kids that you draft that maybe didn't make it through your main camp, but still are established in the North American Hockey League in our case. So that's not the first efficiency number, but that's another layer of it. In other words, we drafted 10, 5 players made our team, but 3 other players made other teams after our main camp. So in other words, they didn't make it with us. It could be a myriad of reasons. Maybe they're a goalie and they're really, really good, but we had 2 established goalies that we didn't know where they were going to go or if they were going to leave to go to college earlier or play in another league. All of a sudden, we still established those 2. They're good for us. We have no intentions of moving away from those 2. But we had a guy drafted that was phenomenal, and he gets picked up by another team. So that's a secondary efficiency number that we roll into this saying, hey, look, even though they didn't work out with us, they're still null quality, meaning we did our job as a scouting staff to bring in the right players. So you shouldn't be punished because you found the right talent. They just didn't fit into the team for other circumstances. So that's part of the efficiency number. The other side of this that's important is the effectiveness. So you've got this efficiency, 5 players make the team. Now, are they in games? Are they playing games? And every team establishes a different level. We establish a level that we want to see them. They're in that effective range if they play half the season or more. Okay, then they fall into they're effective as far as making the lineup. Now you can start for forwards, you can start counting points, and for defensemen you can count minutes, goalies, goals against, and minutes. What they're doing to produce for you. So you have to look at efficiency and effectiveness both together. Now here's the part that gets hard. We use a rolling 5-year number on our team. We look back 5 years and see how our trends are moving. I'm not going to give you anything in writing on this because that's something that I don't want other teams to have. So I'm not going to, give you our spreadsheets on this. So you got to bear with me on this and kind of have a visual picture of what I'm talking about. So we look at efficiency and effectiveness. We look at secondary efficiency, which means kids that still stay in the league. And then there's another number in that draft that we play in on that efficiency. That's that first category, which is how many kids that we drafted either went to play NCAA college hockey or ended up in the USHL in those 2 categories. And once again, we don't look at that and ding our staff of scouts because they're picking up kids that move on. Now, if it's consistent where, hey, geez, you keep picking kids that are, leaving for college already, that's an issue because then you're not knowing your market and you're not really doing your homework to find out if players are going to play juniors or not. If they already got a commit, you should know that. Some kids get called up early, or they find out late that a team has an opening for whatever reason. So does that make sense? Throw up your comments if this is just I'm talking too fast and I've got too much caffeine in me. But once again, we're looking at how many kids actually stick on our team. That's the first number we look at every year. The second number is how effective they were for us. Now, once we get those two and we know what our rolling average is, then we go out and look at the rest of the league. And then we put ourselves up against the other teams that we know. We look at the same categories with every other team. We look at their efficiency and we look at their effectiveness, and we see how much we have in common and how many things we're different in. Okay, man, they're really efficient, but their effectiveness, they're not really playing those kids much. In other words, maybe they brought all 10 kids. And now here's the second point. Some teams, if you're drafted, just like you're tendered, there are teams in the null that it's almost a shoe-in that if you get tendered or drafted, you're going to stay. You're going to make it through main camp. There's other teams that is still, you've got to beat out veterans, you got to beat out tenders, you got to beat out draft picks, you got to beat out, invited players, you got to beat out kids that made it from the pre-draft. You got to beat out everybody to make that roster. There is no, there's no finality once you get that tender or that draft in your hand that you're going to make that roster. So we tend to be one of those teams where, that got you a ticket to main camp. Now you got to prove yourself at main camp. And then in the fall, when there's 30, 32 kids there, you still got to make it as the roster gets trimmed down to 25 or so kids. So there's two different levels on that. So here's a question for you. As I'm talking about this, and we've got efficiency and effectiveness, and we're only talking about the draft, what do you think the number is that would make you good in the North American Hockey League as far as a staff, as far as the draft goes? And what I mean is, what's the efficiency number you think? And I'd love to see it in the comments. Is that number, if you get 30% of your draft picks to make the roster, if you get 40% of your draft picks to make the roster, and it could be 100%. What is the number you think? Of course, if you're getting 100% every year, you're doing great. Okay, you're doing great. And I get it. I can tell you this right now. Nobody's running at 100% in the North American Hockey League. What are your thoughts on that? Love to see your comments on that. Just throw a number up. Give me a number. I know we've got quite a few people on already, but nobody except for saying go Brahmas and love the Brahmas, which is great. I'd still love to see. I'd still like to see what your number is. Throw your number up and tell me what you think as far as what RJ says 25%. Okay, we'll see that. Let's see if we can get a couple other guesses up there because that's interesting, RJ, that you say 25. We got a 20% coming in, and we've got 25. Do we hear 30? Do we hear 30? Anybody on a 30? Frank says 70%. And once again, I didn't throw this one up there, but RJ said 25%. So 70% would be good. That would be real good. And I can tell you right now that 50% is great. Okay. The standard of excellence, I would say that number would be somewhere more like 60% is really, really good. We had one season 2 years ago where we had 66% for our team. And, the leader in the league this season had a efficiency number. I just had it in my hands. I think they had a low 60s, and it was the best in the league from this last draft. And I'm not afraid to say who it was because they did a good job. They probably should get the credit for it, and that was Maryland. And Maryland had low 60s, so pretty darn good job there, if you ask me, with low 60s on that. Anybody got a guess on why Maryland may have better numbers than everybody else? What is there a contributing factor to Maryland's success on that side. And I believe that, across the board, they, they've been one of the better programs that have been around for the last few years. They were first place team this year. They were 40-13 with 3 shutout losses, 86 points, 85 points. That's not bad. That's a really good program this year in their division. The South with us had 94. The Midwest leader had 90 or 82 points. That's Wisconsin. Maryland had 86 points in the East Division, and then the Central Division had 85 points with Minot, the Monteros. So that's pretty darn good across. I really enjoy those numbers and seeing the tops and what the tops are doing. So now I'm trying to make this sort of be more of an educational series as we go through, and not trying to hit you up with all the analytics that we use to pick a draft. So the next part of what we do is, after we take the efficiency and effectiveness numbers, then the deep dive comes in. So we've got a rolling 5-year average of how our draft picks did as far as making our rosters, how effective they were once they were on the roster, and what they did on there. Then it's a deep dive into the rest of the league and seeing what they've done for the year too. Same exact numbers. So we pull up every single player that was drafted per team, and we see, A, do they stick on the roster? B, were they doing anything when they were on the roster? In other words, were they in the lineup? Were they, you can be on the roster but not in the lineup. You can be in the lineup and not get much ice and not, have any effective value to the team. And maybe that's because maybe it's because they play a very small role in the team, or maybe that's because they're just young and the team's just working slowly. That's not what I try to decide. What I'm trying to look at is trying to see if, across the board, the overall trend. So once we've got those two items secured in the league and we know what the league's doing, then we go back and start looking at where the players come from. Okay, where are players that our team takes? Where are we getting them? What was the key to a draft? Now I got a window open. I'm just trying to close while I'm talking to you here, and I can't see why it's open, but it's in the way, and it irritates me when there's something on the screen that I can't close so I can see your comments. So, there we go. I just got it. Got to get it out of the way here. There we go. Okay. So, okay, let me answer one question before I move on. Frank asks, are these numbers on EP? What a great question. That is just an incredible question. If you have premium on Elite Prospects, what you can do is you can go back and dig for these numbers. None of these numbers are just a click of the button. That's why it takes a little more elbow grease. You can pull up the NOL draft, and it's easiest to pull up the NOL draft on the NOL site. And if you I would Google NOL draft 2023. It'll pull up the page on the NOL where you can pull up the draft and look at it. And then I usually sort from there. And let me see if I can pull that up while we're speaking, and I'll show you that. Let's go NOL draft 2023. And maybe it's because I put 2912 in for the draft. I think 2023 works much better than putting that future draft in that. Okay, so let me pull that screen up for you. Okay, you should have that screen now. And this is Frank asked the question about the draft. So you can view the results of the draft right there. Boom. I just pull that up. Now, here's the total draft across the board. You can see who got the first pick. We never get the first pick. We never get the second. We're always down here because when you do well during the season, you end up being a team that picks very low in the draft. So there we are, first pick at 30. Now, with that being said, what I do on this is I want to see by team. So what I do is I pull it up by team so I can get quick information. I want to know Aberdeen across the board, who they picked, what round they picked them in. And, see, Aberdeen only had 3 picks that year because they either traded off their picks or they used them for like this one from El Paso. There was a lot of horse trading going on there. But now what I can do is I can look at every single team and, who their picks were, where they came from hometown wise in their last team. Those are all things I'm going to use. So yes, I garner all this information here and I build a spreadsheet with all these different teams. This is getting into, like I said, most people won't take the time or the effort to do this. And that's why I don't have a problem sharing it. If you want to do that, put the hours and hours and days into this to build your spreadsheet, go for it. That's what it takes to get this information. So you start here, you build your spreadsheet out team by team with their ranked picks. So I can see, for example, here, Amarillo, their first round pick, their fourth round pick, their fifth round pick, and the number next to it there, I know it's small on your screens, is the actual overall pick. So first round, number 24, Amarillo took Lucas Jeffries. Okay. And the fifth round with the 155th pick, they took Aiden Gary Epi, I think you say that. So then, I list all that, their height, their birth year, their position. I don't really care about their hometown, but I really care about their last team. So now that I've got that, that's when I go over to elite prospects. And, we go into the elite prospects screen. And from there, that's when we start picking on the use of the deep dive. And what I mean by the deep dive is now I've got all this information. I want a little bit bigger picture on these players. What I want to know is, how they did during the season. I want to pull up their season numbers, and I want to see, do they have a great year before that? Is this a jump up in points? Did they decline? And here's where the factor comes in that most people don't have this number. And I'm not going to give you this number. I won't give anybody this number. I'm hesitant to give this number to anybody in our organization. There is a factor that you can figure out to gauge other leagues. The NHL uses this all the time. In other words, if the NHL drafts a player from NCAA Division I, every single league inside of Division I, all the different leagues have a different factor number. So if the player is a 30-point player playing in the Big Ten inside of the Division I, they might get a 0.4 factor. In other words, take their points, times them by 0.4, and that's the equivalent of what they feel that player will be when he steps into the NHL. If they're playing in the OHL, that number is usually a little bit higher, which I would argue with. But that number, maybe they get a 0.5 or a 0.6. So whatever points they get in the OHL, that is times by 0.6, and they get that factor. And now the numbers are actually close. There's not a 2/10 divisor between the NCAA Division I Big Ten kid and the kid coming out of the OHL. In fact, nowadays, because the USHL is getting so much stronger and NCAA is getting so much stronger as players are developing better on that side of the coin, there's much more emphasis put on giving those players strong numbers now. And, you get a kid coming out of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, that factor might be a little lower. Well, we do the same thing. Kid coming out of U18, different leagues, there's an A, B, C factor on what his production should be, meaning maybe one of the top U18 leagues, he gets a factor of this. If you're playing in another league that's a lot weaker, you're getting less of a factor on that. So maybe, I'm just making this up, the best tier 1 kid that we draft comes out of the best league, and he's a great player in that league. He gets a factor of 0.7 coming into the null. A kid coming out of that's a really good player coming out of a third level league at U18, maybe he's only getting a factor of 0.5 or 0.4 coming out of that league as far as our draft analysis goes, if that makes sense. It's not equal. You've heard that. We say this all the time. And you hear parents on there giving all their different advice on our site, and God bless everybody, but most aren't putting the analytical work into it to figure out exactly, on paper what it looks like as far as the factor goes. Does that make sense to all of you? The efficiency score with the Brahmas last year, I know I'm jumping off, but I saw this question come in. This last year, this is something you can pull up if you want to see it yourselves. We did not have our best year. We were 6 of 13 for 46 points. Our secondary efficiency, um, I did not factor that into this, and so I didn't write it down. I think that pushed us up to, maybe another 13 points up or something. We were in the 60 on the secondary, so it wasn't our best year. But there's extenuating circumstances that we did go a little bit well on, but we only had 13 picks um, in this draft, and we got what we wanted though. we got exactly what we wanted. We knew what we were going for, and the ones that we wanted to stayed, and it worked out really well with us. And I'm not going to get into the efficiency or the effectiveness number because that's something we're not going to share on this. But you can, if you really wanted to, you could probably do it. Now, everybody gives a different effectiveness number because this is where this is where the subjectivity comes in a little bit. How many games do you count played to count a kid as being effective? And if it's points that you're using, what's the threshold of points, to be a A-level player, a B-level player, and a C-level player? Those can be different for every team. There is no standard on this. Now, when you look into NFL and you look at, the NHL, a lot of teams use these same factors to build in to get efficiency and effectiveness. They might call it something else, but basically you're looking at the same thing, and they all factor in from what leagues you're coming from. So we went from 66 last year to 46 this year. That was one of our lowest in the last 5 years. But again, we got exactly what we were looking for. And remember, we're not talking about the tender situation at all. We haven't talked about that. That's separate. But there are a lot of similarities between rating your tender class, and it's harder for me to discuss tenders because they're not public. There isn't a public list you can go to and grab that shows every team's listed tenders. I have access to that. I have an internal document on that, but I can't share that with you on this platform. We can talk about it in general terms, but I can tell you that once again, there are teams out there with their tenders that it's almost a shoe-in that unless you really, really don't come in prepared, you're going to make it if you're a tender. And there's other programs that don't have that policy. So there's a little bit different look on how people utilize tenders and think about tenders. So any other questions on this item? I didn't want to get too deep into it. Just waiting to see if anything pops in. A couple of this thank yous. I won't have to post all those, but okay, that's it on that. I mean, it's not. It takes several weeks for me to compile this each year. I do it for all of our scouting staff. I do it for our coaching staff too, and we share this and we talk about it. It also gives our staff a better picture of what works. Okay, look, here's the guys that make it every year. Here's where they're coming from, and then we compile that and look at it. We've got a rolling 5-year average. Here's what makes our team. Here's once they make the team, here are the guys that are creeping up to the top. What do they have in common? Is it the same league they're coming out of? Is it the style of play they're at? Is it the level? Is U18 different than prep? Is picking up a player in juniors better than U18 or a prep player? And of course, age factors into this. One of the things that's very important to do is to also watch, and this where it gets it a little bit trickier, especially when it comes to potential trades inside the league. Let's say a player is playing on the East Coast in the East for the Null, and they've got a player that's played for them for 2 years and is going into his last year, and they've put him up for a trade. So if that's the case, they've got a player for trade. A deep dive into that team to see how their players that made the roster, played a year, and then came back as a second-year veteran, how much improvement they got. If they've got a record of second-year to third-year players, how much improvement do you see in them? In other words, most players in the league, and we're using points now, and that's different with goalies, and it's also different with defensemen. Defensemen may be on a points if they're on offensive defensemen. Usually if they get 15, 20 points or more a year, you can start rating them with this scale too. You look at things like what's the improvement from year to year. So if we're looking to pick up a veteran player, um, and we see a kid had 15 points his first year, he had 25 points his next year, then we go to the team and see what's their track record for that third year player. Does a third year player get relegated because fresh bodies are coming in? Does a third year player get more of a leash? And you kind of see how they develop for that next level of points. If there's a team out there that, all of a sudden a third player comes around and his numbers go a second year player and his numbers go down from first year to second year, we're kind of hesitant looking at him to say, why would we want a third year player that his last season went down? And you look at the whole team and take the whole picture into account also. How are they at developing the efficiency side of their players once they've got them on their roster? So just like they do in the NHL, we're looking at the track record of the player. If he stayed with an organization in youth, and he played 15, 16, and his 17th year with a team, meaning his first year of U18, how did he do? Did he go from 15 to 16 and make a jump in points? Was he staying consistent when he went to 18s? And if it's a guy that's got 2 years of 18 under his belt, did he make another jump his second year of 18s? If he's in prep, how did he do as he moved from one year to another? If he's a junior player and he started off maybe in the Premier League, then he went to the NCDC, how was his transition and what was his drop off, or did he maintain those points? All those things come into factor on this, and we look at all these kind of numbers. Once again, this is one faction. This is not everything we do. We're not talking about watching a player. We're not talking about skills evaluation. We're not talking about putting him through any kind of other areas. We're just talking about how he looks on paper and where he comes from and how that part of the draft comes in. So let's just get on the board here before we change subjects and see what's going on. Frank, thanks so much. I appreciate you putting that in there. Let's see what the next comment is. Oh, we already got that one. Here's another one. For calculating these values, do you take the league stats at face value? Some leagues are horrible. Of course, we do if it's the null. The null is extremely accurate on their numbers. You may argue that, but they get scrutinized. Most of them are on live. All of them are being watched live on video. There's people watching them. You got the central staff of the null, the nucleus that the administration there that actually watch the games. You've got player review, because they all get a copy of their shifts, and if they see something wrong with their shift, I got an assist, or that I got a hit on that I didn't get a credit for, coach. Nobody's tracking hits at this, from the scouting side, but internally that's important to a kid. An assist is important. They'll review that and they'll correct that if there's an assist there. If the kid gets a plus minus that's wrong, they'll review that too, and they'll correct that. Most junior leagues, tier 2, tier 1, BCHL, AJHL, they're correcting all that stuff. So, we take that to heart. And to be honest with you, the stats we're looking at, we usually verify it through the coach how accurate they are. Just to ask, hey, we see this kid's got 60 points. Is that correct? Is that number good? And the coach will say, yeah, that's good. Or he's probably got a couple that we lost in a tournament, but that's pretty good right there. So yeah, we're not. If something looks really out of whack on a kid, if a kid's got 150 points and he's 40 points ahead of everybody else in the league, we usually question that, and we also maybe we ask around to see if there's a little padding going on at that U16 team, and that does happen from time to time, but most of the time that's not the case. So do we check it? Yes. So those values, once again, we're pretty thorough on that, and we've probably watched a kid. If we're going to draft a kid, we've probably watched him through several sets of eyes, numerous times, and so we get an idea real quick on if those numbers are accurate or not. So if we watch him play and we don't see him touch the puck, and he's got 2 assists at the end of the games, you got 2 assists. I don't remember seeing those. Which goals did you get those on? We talk it out. We ask the coach about it. And, rarely, maybe once every other year do I run across something that's so egregious that I have to take it into factor or play it into factor. That doesn't really come into play much. But it's a good question. I appreciate the question on that. All right. Anybody else got a question on that? I didn't want to get too deep into it. We've spent probably more time than I expected to spend on this. Yeah, I wanted to get through it in less than 25 minutes. It took me 35 minutes, but think about it. You can ask questions later in the show once we're done with this next section and come back to it. But hopefully you get a little bit of an idea now. There's a lot of legwork that goes into this. I will do this too, not consistently, but I will break down other junior leagues. I will break down U18s. Sometimes I'll even do, I think the last time I did it was about 3 years. I broke down preps, and I'll do the same thing with their players. And I'll look at a roster, find out where they're getting their players from. And you can do all this. This is nothing different than the reverse engineering that I talk about all the time. Hey, look, if I'm in the know and I'm looking at a player from U18, I can find out where he came from to get to that U18 team. If I'm looking at a player in another junior league, I can look at where he came from and start building a story and work backwards from there. That's the whole idea of it. I would like to see the point where Elite Prospects actually gives me more information about coaches a kid played for and give me records on those coaches. Give me history of the coach on, like, a player. I can tell who he played with, and I can also see where all those players are at now. How successful is that team? But I can't tell what players are associated with what coach. Skills guys do this all the time. On resumes, you see this all the time. Oh, I have 54 NHLers that I helped produce over the last 30 years. I'm nowhere near that. My NHL number, first of all, I don't take any credit for an NHLer anyway. I might have worked with them in skills. They might have played on my team. But an NHLer's got so much else going on. My little window is not what put him over the edge. Hopefully I didn't get in that player's way on his ascension. And that's the way I look at it. So I tend to try to stay a little more humble on thinking that I'm the reason why guys are in the NHL, even though they may have played for me or came through my organization or did skills drills with me. So that's pretty much it on the subject. Well, we got one more. I'll get in here and grab Tom. Tom says, "Are you looking strictly at points, or do you look at other attributes for different roles in the lineup?" Of course, we look at other attributes, but the hardest thing to find is skilled offensive players that can produce at the higher levels. I'm not saying it's easier to get a defenseman. Not at all. I didn't mean that. I'm talking about forwards. You get 12 forwards. We might take 3 guys that are strong on, playing the game, defensive role, energy guys, but we're looking for 10, 12 guys that can grow into scorers, because that's the hardest role to find. So it's also proportional. Maybe all of our goal scorers are staying, or any team that's drafting, they're staying, and you're looking for either younger players you can grow into roles, or you're looking for big, strong guys that can make a difference on your defensive side of your offensive players. So that's a hard question to really give you a strong answer on, because that one changes so much, and it also depends on what you have returning, what you tendered, and of course, as you look at that, if you've got, like, for example, this year, our captain of the team is one of our stronger defensive players. He put up good numbers before he came to our program. So sometimes once they get into the program, their roles adjust. It's just like, you look at Joey Kosar. He was a fighter in the NHL, but he was coming out of juniors as one of the top points players. And he had an incredible good run on points. He was over 100-point guy, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but his numbers were really high. But he adjusted his game and brought out another side of his game that he had in the NHL to keep the career going, to keep moving forward with the game. So, yes, Tom, we do look at a lot of factors, but I can tell you this: we're not going to have 4 lines, 12 guys of forwards out there that are just were brought on the team for other than points. That's just not the reality of the world on that. So hopefully it helps a little bit. And remember, I'm not talking when I'm talking right now. 90% of what I'm talking about is not directly related to the team I'm working with now. This is talking about the overall process. A little bit with the role I'm in right now with one team, but a lot of information with the overall process and what people that are really professionals, when they say they're scouts or player development directors, what they're really doing. Good coaches, good general managers, They might do this information themselves, or they just might make sure somebody on staff is doing it so they've got that picture and they can rely on them. Some coaches, this is what I present to a general manager of our team, which happens to be our coach. He takes that information whatever way he wants to run with it. He doesn't take that information and run with it as gospel. I might say, hey, look, this is the league we get the best results out of. This is the league that we get the least results out of. That coach has never given us a player that's good. That coach has been 3 for 3 with his last 3 players. We've hit home runs with him. Those might be the facts. And our head coach come draft time says, no, I want this kid. That's fine. That's, I did my job. I'm not, excuse me, I'm not there to try to override the final decision on this. Hope that makes sense. Thank you on the comment there. Let's change gears. Let's get into the fun topic for the night. Excuse me, folks. Without Mike here, I can't flip the camera over to Mike and mute myself and cough when I get a cough. So you get what you get. But I do have my really good tea to help here. So let's talk about. I teased you guys a little bit with it. I'm going to go down to a small screen and I'm going to pull up this little presentation I put together. One organization has 43% of the rosters, the starting rosters played in this organization of the 4 teams in the Frozen Four. Michigan has 10 of these players. BU has 8 of these players. BC has 8 of these players. Denver has 8 of these players. What organization? Holy smokes. It's not the USHL. Not the NAL. It's not the BCHL. What organization has 43%? Now, the USHL might be higher. Should be. A lot of players funnel through the USHL to get to the league. But I'm going to give you another piece of information on this because it's going to get interesting for you as we talk about this. Let me change the slide here. Oh, there we go. Michigan, BU, BC, Denver. 10, 8, 8, 8 as far as this goes. And as far as the draft picks that go along with that, BC, 8 players, 6 of them are drafted in the NHL from this one organization. BU, 8 players came from this organization. 6 of them are draft picks. Michigan, 10 players, 6 are draft picks. Denver, 8 players, 4 draft picks. Anybody have a guess? Anybody out there have a guess what organization I'm talking about? I'll wait. Nobody wants to take a stab at this one? I know I'm on a little bit of a delay, so I got to give you a second before that number pops into me. Some of the platforms, it's about a 40-second delay. Some it's about a 30-second delay before you actually get the number. So when I ask for a question, it takes a second before you get it. This will be actually, Brandon, what I'm going to do with this number is we're going to look together on this one to see what the USHL and the NTDP does. It's a great answer. Brooks does an awesome job, and they put a lot of players up, but not even Brooks or Lone Star or any one player or any one team has those kind of numbers. AJ, no, that's a good guess too. It's not the AJ. Let me give you a little more information. It's the brick. Think about this. Anybody know what the brick is? Put it in the comments if you're familiar with it, but it's a summer tournament. 230 average, give or take a few players are there. 12 teams. Didn't used to be 12 teams, but they got 12 teams now. I think they might even be a little over 12 this year. A 10-year-old tournament. For 10-year-olds, folks, 43% of the Final Four, 43% made it that far. Now, when you hear somebody say, you're putting too much pressure on those kids, let me go through the statistics on this. 10-year-old players, and the numbers are amazing coming out of this tournament. Yes, it's held out in Edmonton. There's Edmonton or Calgary. I've only been to it once myself in person. The year my son made the team, he broke his wrist. We didn't make the trip with the team. The team ended up winning the whole thing. We were skating with a team out of Toronto. It's an incredible event. It's in a mall. In fact, I put a picture of the mall up right there. and it is great. I just can't remember if we got off in Edmonton or I've been out to both those places so many times. I get them confused. I believe it's Edmonton. You probably would know. Um, so we got comments coming in on this. Yeah, top 10-year-olds. And it's the Brick Invitational. Good guess when you got that. And the other one is my son played in 2019. What an incredible experience. I'm so glad you got to go. If you're still young or if you still have it, that's why I said most people are not going to get into this is because it happened already. In most of your players' careers, they've already passed that up. And unless you get one of those Cuban birth certificates where you can, just like in baseball with the Little League World Series, and you can play in the event when you're 5 years older, 6 years older. In other words, it's past you then. All right, let's look a little more. Let's take a little more deeper dive into this. 10-year-old players, 10 years old. Some kids play this at 9. Some get 2 years into this, not many. Now, here's where it gets a little fun. 54%. 54%. Now, what do I mean by 54%? We'll get back to that, but I'm going to show you what I mean. 54% make it into the NHL, OHL, Q, all the major juniors, the NCAA, the NAL, the USHL, and all the pro leagues, the AHL, ECHL, and the KHL over in Russia. I didn't look into the Europeans because that would have been a deep dive that would have taken me a long time to go through all the pro leagues in Europe to figure it out. But look at those areas. That's the top of hockey right there. The NCAA, BCHL. If you don't know what U Sports is, that's the Canadian equivalent to the NHL, and it picks up all the major junior guys that because they used up their eligibility or they're not granted eligibility in the NCAA, they still can play hockey in the U Sport after the OHL or the major junior, and they can play for great schools, get a great education. And those teams are good. Those teams are real good. You'll see, in the preseason for the NCAA Division I, you'll see a lot of teams play a U Sport team, and the scores aren't always what you think they're going to be. You think they're going to be blowouts on the American side, and they're not, because these are good programs. They got a lot of. You can even be a guy that gets into the East Coast or the AHL, and depending on how your contract was written up, you can still go back to and be eligible for U Sports. And once again, contingent on your contract, you might even be able to use your money from the OHL or major junior hockey, depending on how that was and what year you came out. So those are the areas. Let's look a little bit deeper into the numbers on this. 8% of the NHL current players, 8% played in the Brick. That's 1 out of 10. That means that there's a couple players. Each team has 32 players that scroll through during the season. That's about the average in the NHL. They see about 32 players move in and out of the lineups. Of that number, that means that you've got 3 guys that play in the Brick on every roster on average in the NHL. Think about that. Identified at 10 years old. Tell me another league, tell me another team, tell me another organization, and we'll look at the USHL because I want to do a comparison on that, and I didn't have time to do it, so we'll do that live. 510 players are in the upper levels of juniors, and I'll give you the numbers on those as individual leagues. So these are all the junior leagues. We'll do the major juniors first, and the major juniors, the OHL has 82, the Western League has 160, and the Q, the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, is 35. So how does that compare to the NAL has 60, the USHL has 129, and the BCHL has 79. So that's where those numbers are coming from. So the USHL is only second to the WHL, which makes sense. This is a Western. It is Edmonton. And it's a Western tournament. It's probably going to get a lot more looks from the Western League because it's right there in their backyard. So you get a lot of the WHL guys, scouts, general managers, coaches get a chance to watch the Brick in the summer. And they do. When people say they don't start scouting at this age, I'm going to tell you, I'll call bullshit to that any day. There's NHL guys that know what's going on in the Brick. Even if they're not there in person, they got somebody there watching it for them. There are scouts that know all the stats coming out of this, and I'm going to show you why in a second, because I'll pull up another graph for you in a second. Let's jump onto something else here. 346 professional players. Now, remember, this is current. All these numbers I'm giving you are a snapshot of right now, what's going on now. There are 346 players. Now, remember, the last was a 2013. Those kids are 10. So 2012 or 2023, I'm sorry, 2023, those kids were 10. So that means 2022, they're 11. You got to work backwards on that number to get to what there's the only current years for kids at that age are the kids that are like 17 and older. And I wrote that number down. I just got to find the piece of paper on that. In other words, what I mean is when I say the professional players or the NCAA or major junior numbers, these are from kids that are current. This doesn't add up all the players that did play NCAA since 2000. I think the first year I used was the 2009 class, I believe, or was it the 2009 tournament, which was the 99 birth years. 99 birth years, and I'm going to pull that up in a second to show you how good that one class did. But think about that, 346, and I put the number, it's hard to see, 61 in the NHL, 99 in the AHL, East Coast League's got 48, and the KHL has 2. That's incredible. And I'm going to get to a couple comments because there's some comments coming in on this. Give me a second on that, though. Let's get through the NCAA numbers and just look at that, too. That slide shouldn't be there. Once again, I put this together. 283 currently in college hockey. That's only U Sport, which is 37, and the NCAA Division I, which is 210. But, when you start adding up these numbers, you're starting to get into numbers that are crazy. Of the last, once again, this is only looking at the brick from the 09 brick year, 2009 through 2016. There's 8 years there. Of that 8 years, there was a total of 1,816 players that played in that. 972, well over half. I believe that number gets them well over half. Of course it gets them well over half. 972 is more than half of 1816. Are playing either major junior, NCAA, elite American juniors, or they're playing pro already, which is incredible. And you have to understand that there's 54% of that group. That's the number I'm looking for. 54%, which I showed you on the graph earlier. Half of that group is playing currently right now of the brick from 2009 to 2016, 2009 to 2016, the 0809 to the 16, 17. I'm sorry, 16, 17 to 09 through 17. Of those years, 1,800 players, 54% of them are playing at the highest levels you can play at. That's just an incredible stat that shows you, yes, and this is why this important statement that came in. I'm glad you put this up here. And this one's a little bit longer. Getting on a brick team is not easy and generally shows a high level of athlete and family commitment to the sport, financial and time. So it's not surprising that the athletes continue to be committed and succeed. The kids also get a taste of what it's like. I'm assuming that's what it goes on to say. I didn't get the full comment. Absolutely. Absolutely. In other words, people have to make decisions on talent at 10, and those decisions are very effective. If you put this into the efficiency and effective model, we're looking for 60% is a benchmark, 65% is a benchmark to be successful. Our level on our draft level picks, okay? They're already hitting it at 10 years old, okay? In other words, people are picking the kids that do make it. Now, you're right. Some of this is because these kids have some things in their favor. They've got a committed family that are willing to sacrifice at that age. Absolutely. Absolutely. They probably have a lot more ice time than most. They're probably already playing on great teams. As in our family, we had a kid that made the brick, and he was playing for pro hockey development out of Toronto. And it was between them and the Bulldogs on which team he was going to go with, because he had played with both of them and had fun with both. They had friends on both teams. Picked the pro hockey team, development team, and geez, the roster was just chock full of good players, but these are players that you knew were good from 7, 8, 9 years old, it was very clear they were the better players, in the better leagues. So absolutely, you're getting chosen for these teams. It's a tryout, but isn't every team supposed to be a tryout? I mean, yeah, I get it. Some people say, "Oh, 10 years old, that's way too soon." It wasn't too soon for Tiger Woods. It wasn't too soon for Serena Williams. It wasn't too soon for Ronaldo if you're a soccer person. When people say it's not too soon, uh, why? Why is it too soon? If there's an avenue and they're enjoying it and the family is enthusiastic and can support it, I just don't understand. I know you're not saying that in that comment. That was a very positive comment. I'm not trying to argue with the comment. I'm just trying to add to that comment and to kind of pull it out a little bit more. Um, yes, is it an elite sport, especially financially? Can you play the sport without money? It's hard. You can. Can you do some of the things like the brick if you don't have money? There are players. I do know players that there's a league or there's somebody that sugar daddies them. Hey, good for them. That happens in other sports too. You see golfers get sugar daddied all along. Hey, we'll invest this much into this 17-year-old player or this 18-year-old player in their career, and then we want a return on the money as they win tournaments. It happens in other sports where you're supported by usually a group of people that back you. It happens a little bit in hockey, but for the most part, those golfers don't have the money to do what they need to do to make the pros. And they usually get, I don't even think sugar daddy's nice. That's probably not appropriate. It's an investment. People that invest in them to help them grow their business. And I get these in an email on this once in a while. There'll be a local golfer that's really good at 17 years old. He's going to jump down and play on one of the minor tournaments, and they're looking for people to invest in him to get his career going. And, some people can put $100,000 into a kid, and that does happen rarely in hockey. I've seen it out of the Toronto market more than I've seen it anywhere else, but it's rare. It's rare. And yes, do you have to have money? Most of the time you do. We all know that. You don't get into golf unless you're usually going to support playing golf every day in the summer. You don't get into any equestrian sports unless you can afford, horses. Rugby, you can play with it. You don't even need anything. You just get a pair of shoes on, and a pair of shorts on, and you go out there and punch each other in the nose. But when it comes to hockey, you need some money. We all know that. I appreciate the comment. So anyway, with this, what I wanted to do is I wanted to pull up elite prospects, and I wanted just to look real quick at the U.S. It'll just take a second to do this. We'll look at the USHL, and we will see if we can pull this up. It should be right there. And I'll share that window with you. Okay, so here we are on Elite Prospects. I'm going to go up the top here, and it's really simple to do. So getting back earlier, we had a comment about how you can look for this information. And I believe I think that came in from, who brought that comment in? It was Frank. Frank brought this in. So Frank, here's how you do it. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to pull up the USHL. Simple as that. USHL. There it is. I'll click on USHL. It'll bring me to the league. Little lag. Sorry, folks. Now, once I get to the league, I go through all the standings. I come down to the players. I hit the green button below the players. This is anytime I'm using the search engine, this is what I want. Now, all I'm going to do is come up here and I'm going to type brick. Right in that top line, Brick Invitational pops up right there. What am I doing? I'm filtering out all the kids. I want to see the kids that played in the brick. Now, if I wanted to add other things like, show me brick players that also are a certain age or shoot left-handed, I could add all kinds of things in there. But I just want to know how many kids in the USHL played in the brick. And we can see that number is 121. The first page shows 100. You come over below that in the gray there, it's 121 on the forwards. And on the goalie side, it looks like we've got 8. So 129 players currently in the league played in the brick. So we can go back here, get rid of that. And what I didn't do at first is get a number on what the total number of guys in the USHL currently is at. So I get there, hit that number again with nothing in the areas. I can come down here And pull that number. That number is forwards 528, and goalies, it looks like we got another 37, 47, 57, 60, 57 goalies. So we got just under 600 players, and we've got 120 some odd players that played in the brick. So 1 out of 6, that's pretty good odds. We can figure it's a little bit higher than what we were thinking about. Anyway, it's a fantastic thing to look at. It's nothing else than just pure numbers. But who would have thought, if you didn't know this, let me get myself back up here. If you didn't know this, now you do. You know that the brick is cool. The brick is really cool. It's an excellent source of seeing what players are. I also told you that I'd pull up and we'd look at, just real quick, we would look at the what did I tell you we're going to look at? We're going to look at the 99 class. So let's look at the brick and look at that 99 class and see how they did. It's really incredible numbers here. And that's the last thing we're going to do today. We're not going to spend any more time on anything. So if I just bring up the brick invitational, and I think I also had a list of some of the players of names that you might recognize that I wrote down because they were pretty special, but the names are like, what are some of the names? Oh, Quentin Hughes, leading defenseman, or one of the leading defensemen in points this year, played in the brick. Luke Hughes, his brother, NHL. These are NHL guys. Jack Hughes. So 3 Hughes brothers all play. They all came through different routes in this too. Brady Tkachuk played in this, and Connor Bedard played in this a couple years ago. In fact, with his age, he might have played in this tournament last year or a year or two ago. So anyway, we look at the brick. Let's go down and we'll sort it by year. Right here we go. So I can go in here and I can grab that 2009 season is what I think I want to grab, which the numbers are really good in. Yeah, 09. So let me grab that 09 team. Is it the 09, 010, or is it the... I think it's the 08 and 09. Let's try that first. I'll come down here and hit the show more. And let's just look at this roster here. You could probably see names that I might not notice or see as we go through this. But look at the amount of draft picks first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's Quinn Hughes. There's 10 draft picks. 11. There's Tkachuk. 12. 13, 14. This is crazy. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and no goalies, I don't believe, got drafted. So 20 draft picks. Think about this. This blows my mind. 10-year-olds that play in one tournament together. Now, this tournament's different than most because they start a year beforehand with most of these teams selecting their team, and they play in some mini tournaments or some tournaments like a round robin of tournaments to get ready for the brick itself. But you see the numbers of draft picks. Now, if I click on some of these kids like Owen Tippett, I don't know where he's at right now, drafted by Philly. He is now playing for Philly. Look at that. And this is across the board, just amazing to see now. Is he still hanging in there? Yeah, Philly, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 4 years, 1, 2, 3, 4 years of playing as a 99 birth year. Already has 4 years in the NHL. That's incredible. Now I could go through every one of these and we could look at their track records, but I just wanted to point out to you that you can look at kids at that age and you can say there's talent there, and there are people that are betting on their talent at that age, and they're making decisions. And if you tell me that a coach at the college level, at the junior level, or the pro level isn't factoring in the brick and the fact that he was part of that brick, because it says, hey, this kid's been an elite player. By the time he gets to our team at 18 or 19, he's already been an elite player for 8, 9, 10 years, which says something. So anyway, what are your thoughts? We're going to call it a night as far as what we're doing here. Appreciate everybody. Did you guys see that screen? Did I pull that screen up for you? If I didn't, I apologize. I'll show it to you real quick just so you got it. This is the list of, that's Owen Tippett. Let me get back to that list for you. I'm sorry, I thought it was on screen. This is that 99 class of players. You see right off the bat, the top points getter was a draft pick. Then the Detroit Red Wings got Husko. And you just go down the list, you can see the draft picks are, all through this list. There's only 10% of the kids that played in this tournament got drafted. The other thing real quick on this too is as you look at things like this list, what's interesting is the amount of retention. If you're a big USA Hockey fan or you're a big Hockey Canada fan and you really believe in the ADM, throw it out the window on the ADM side, because the ADM is against everything that this tournament stands for. But if you believe in retaining players into their adult years, that's what USA Hockey is really big on right now. How do you turn players into lifelong players? The numbers of players at the 10-year-old mark from that brick tournament, the 230 players of that 99 class, the vast majority, I think the number was close to 85%, were still in the game. It might have been higher. I haven't looked at this number in a while, but it was really high. It was pushing 90% of the players were still playing the game at 18, 19 years old, versus the huge drop off with the rest of players coming from different areas of the sport, where they drain off at 14, they drain off at 16, they drain off at 18. What are your thoughts on that? If you want to put your thoughts on even after we're done with the broadcast tonight, thank you very much. We went a little over an hour tonight. I apologize. I wanted this to be short, but I hope it was some information you liked. I hope it was something that was helpful for you. And let me know what else you want to talk about. You can DM me. You can just start a post on the Facebook group. I really hope that you take the time tonight before you're done to actually jump on and become a member of our YouTube page, Junior Hockey Advisor. And if you're not a member of our Facebook page, a lot of you are on our discussion group already. Thank you very much for that. But boy, oh boy, I would jump on the page and both like and follow the page too. We don't always post the same kind of information in all places, and that way you get good information across the board. Don't forget, our archives are just chock full of good information. And, please take advantage of going onto YouTube and looking at all the videos that we've done. Several hundred videos we've done over the last couple of years. Once again, thanks so much, folks. Have a great night. And keep Mike in your prayers if you can. He's fine, but the family had a family issue that he could sure use your prayers for if you pray. And we'll see you all back next week, hopefully next Wednesday night. Take care, folks.